Hey everybody, I'm here today to show you how to restain your banister. Now what I have here is my banister to go from my main floor to my basement. I was lucky enough that I was able to remove this banister from its setting, but the same process that I'm about to show you will work whether you can remove your banister or simply leave it in place, okay? So we're going to get right to it. The first step is to sand off the old finish and the old stain. So what I am going to be using is a very simple hand sander right here, but you can choose any sander that sort of suits your specific budget and your specific needs. I'm going to use this, and the key here is to get to use progressively finer sandpaper. So I'm going to start off with 60 grit sandpaper just to sort of scuff it up, get off the finish and eat away into the first bit of the stain. Then I'm going to move up to 80 grit sandpaper, and then I'm going to move up to 100 grit sandpaper. Okay, so I am going to be using this sander to sand this banister using 60 grit, then 80 grit, and then 100 grit on it. And that is the first step in restaining your banister, so let's get right to it. Now that I've finished sanding the banister with the 60 grit, 80 grit, and 100 grit sandpaper, I am going to get rid of all the dust that is left on this banister right here. So for that, you're going to first wipe off the dust or vacuum off the dust, depending on what kind of situation you're in. I'm in the garage right here, and I don't have a vacuum nearby, so I'm just going to wipe it off with my sleeve. Alright, get all that dust off of the banister first and foremost, all the excess dust pretty much. So wipe it off or vacuum it off. Alright, and then once you're done that and you've gotten all the excess dust off, you're then going to take a damp rag just like this, and you're going to give that banister a very good wipe down. So I'm going to use the damp rag right here to wipe down the banister. Alright, and what that will do is it will prepare it for the next part of this process, which is actually staining the banister. So I'm just wiping it down, ensuring that all of the dust particles are coming off. Just giving it one final wipe down. Alright, now that you've wiped it down with a damp rag, you're going to give it some time to dry. So in my case right here, I'm going to give it about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and I'm going to clean the work area to get it ready for the staining part of the process. So once again, once you've sanded down the banister, get all of the excess dust off with a sleeve or a vacuum, and then take a damp rag and simply wipe it down and give it some time to dry. And what I would suggest is during that time while it's drying, prepare the area that you will be working around for staining. Get everything ready. Clean up the mess that you've created now that you've sanded it down, and get everything ready for the staining part of the process. Alright everyone, now that the banister has completely dried, is completely clean, and I've cleaned the work area, we are ready for the staining process. So I have the banister right over here, and then I have my stain in this little container over here. I have a paintbrush to apply the stain, and I have a rag to sort of rub the stain onto the wood. Okay, so I'm going to place the camera down and we will get right to it. Let's see if we can get a good camera angle right here. Perfect. So as you can see here, we have the wood. I am taking the paintbrush, I'm dipping it in the stain just a little bit, and then I will be taking that paintbrush now and then just simply brushing it onto the wood, just like that. Okay, I'm going to get a decent amount of the stain onto the wood, just like that. Then what I'm going to do now is place the paintbrush on top of this tin over here to the side. I'm going to take the rag and I am going to sort of rub the rag on that stain to spread it out and rub off any excess stain. I'm just going to move this to the side right here. Just like you see right here, I'm taking the rag and just simply rubbing it on, just like that. and that's removing any excess stain, and it's also allowing the stain to go into the wood completely, okay? And you can, you know, use your imagination and your artistic eye, I guess, and just sort of see what areas need a little bit more stain, what areas need, you know, not so much stain. I'm going to take the paintbrush, dip it in again. I'm going to brush it on one more time in this area and go a little bit further now. And I'm going to continue doing that for basically the entire banister, okay? So I'm going to try and just show you one last time before I shut the camera off and continue doing it. I've taken the stain, I've brushed it on. Now I'm going to take the rag and just simply rub it off, just like that. And as you can see, it gives the wood a nice, very, very nice look. And I'll lift the camera up right now just to show you what it actually does look like, okay? So I'm going to lift the camera up, and this is just the first little bit of stain that I've applied, but as you can see, I brushed it on, and then I wiped it off with the rag, and I will be doing that for the entire banister, this on you know, all the way around, basically on the bottom, both sides, and on the top, all right? So that is the next part of this process, to actually, you know, to actually stain the banister. So take your brush your stain on, take your rag, and wipe it off. You know what, I apologize, I forgot to add to the last little section of the video that you need to let the stain dry. So once you've brushed the stain on and used the rag to wipe it off, you're going to check the container that you got the stain from to figure out how long it needs to dry. So once you've determined that amount of time, then you need to let it sit for that amount of time to ensure that it dries completely before moving on to the next step. Alright everyone, now that the stain has had enough time to dry on the banister, this is what it looks like. And I must say that it looks pretty good. So the next step in this process is to apply the polyurethane finish, okay? And I like to apply it using a simple paintbrush. There is the polyurethane finish in a small container, and I know it doesn't look clear. It looks like this weird color, but it ends up showing up clear on the banister once you, paint it on there. And then this is the paintbrush that I will be using, just a regular old paintbrush, okay? So let's get right to it. I like to simply dip the paintbrush in the polyurethane finish and, you know, brush off any excess and any excess that you have on the paintbrush bristles right there, and then simply brush it onto the banister, okay? And I like to do thin coats. Some people prefer thick coats. I like to do thin coats. Not only do they dry faster, but they end up looking better once it's all said and done and the project is completely finished. So I just do very thin coats of polyurethane finish on the banister using the paintbrush, just like that, very simply. So this is the first coat that I will be applying, or that I am applying, I should say. I'm going to let this dry according to the specifications on the actual container of polyurethane finish that I bought. And then I'm going to apply a second coat. I'm going to let that dry according to the time specifications on the container. And then I'm going to apply a third coat. And after I apply that third coat, I'm going to let the banister sit and the polyurethane dry for a full 24 hours. So just to clarify, this is the first coat. I'm going to let it dry, apply the second coat, let it dry, apply the third coat, and then wait a full 24 hours after that third coat before taking this banister and bringing it back into the house and obviously putting it on the wall again. But once it has dried after the full 24 hours, I will show you what it looks like and show you what the final product looks like. Alright everyone, I have now given the banister the full 24 hours to dry after applying the third coat of the polyurethane finish, and this is what it looks like. I must say it looks pretty good. It has a nice color to it, and the polyurethane finish gave it a nice shine, and it's protected it so that when people have their hands on the banister and are walking down the stairs, that, you know, it won't rub off or anything like that. It gives it a nice protection, and it definitely looks nice and shiny. So the process was pretty simple. I sanded off all of the old stain. I basically sanded the banister down to the bare wood grain. Then I stained it with a paintbrush and a rag. I applied the first coat of polyurethane finish, gave it time to dry. The second coat of polyurethane finish, gave it time to dry. The third coat of polyurethane finish, and then I gave it 24 hours to dry. And this is the end result. I'm now going to take this banister and put it against the wall on the stairway once again. And that's basically it. The process is really simple, and it isn't too expensive to restain your banister. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching.